The first of which being the flop rule. So the competition committee for the NBA has discussed implementing a technical situation where if a team has a player that's found to be flopping, the other team will be awarded a free throw, kind of like a defensive 3-second violation, where it's a technical and you get a free throw for the other team. It'd be something like that. I don't know if it's going to be an escalating thing, or if you do it again, it's like, something else happens. But I think this is interesting because back in, I would say 14, 15, somewhere in there, several years ago, the league implemented that they were finding players for flopping. Right. So it was an escalating thing. I think it was 5K, 10, and it escalated to a point where, it can be a 20, 25K fine or something if you kept doing it. I feel like that went away, or the league got really lax on enforcing that rule. Guys flop all the time. You see Trae Young, you see Embiid, you see Luka, you see CP3, you see all these players, Marcus Smart, and no penalties at all. I don't see anything. So I think it's starting to get to a point where these players feel like they can get away with it. So it's becoming more prevalent. So the league is taking notice and they're like, okay, we're going to have to do something to curb this. And to be honest, the fines helped. But in this day and age, it's like fines don't really do much of anything. So now they're going to have an in-game penalty. So it's going to make the guys think twice about, embellishing contact. Now, I wonder if it's going to be like, oh, you completely made up contact, it's a flop, whatever. Or if you get hit, you do get hit, and you fall or maybe fall back a little bit more than you should, like Embiid, for example, are they going to take notice of that and say that's a flop? You should have been falling because you're almost 300 pounds.
Yeah.
It's going to be a weird line to kind of navigate. I wonder where that is. And it's going to be interesting to see, like, more reviews. That's my main worry about this. Like, is it going to slow the game down to take a look at this? Like, that's where I'm coming from. Overall, I'm in favor of it. The rule change. So
yeah, I mean, if you're taking flopping out of the game, that's, for the love of God, please do it. But honestly, like, I want to take flopping out of the game, but can we take complaining to the refs out of the game first? I mean,
oh yeah, thank you. Yeah,
but like, just call technicals when they're screaming at you after every play. But either way, that's beside the point. As far as this rule is concerned, you brought up exactly what I was going to say, is where there's going to be a fine line. And when you're looking at it in slow motion, if they're making contact and they flop, it's going to be really hard to judge if it was okay to fall or not.
Yeah.
So, someone could just lose their footing and it looks like a flop. So I think it's going to have to come down to a clear and obvious, no one made contact with you and you flailed back like you got hit. I think that's what it's going to have to be. Because if you're like the Embiid situation, I mean, if he, leaned back and the guy pushed him in some way, who's to know if he just lost balance and fell? It'll just be hard to gauge that when you're looking by. I mean, we already know how hard it is to judge a flagrant and how, if someone did something on purpose, because that it's happening so fast, and then we're watching these things frame by frame. We don't know. You can't tell when you're doing that, so it's going to be tough to judge. I think it just has to be this clear and obvious rule, but if it helps taking flopping out of the game, I'm certainly for it.
I'm for it too. But when it comes to this rule, if you're going to do this, I really just would plead with the officials and the replay center, just be consistent with the calls. Like, if we can just get that.
You know what? It might even be better, and I don't want to get into like, hey, let's make up new rules, but put it on the other team to like challenge it and make it a technical or something. And then it's not, they're reviewing every single thing every single time. Like the coach on the other team has to force them to review it for a technical. So we're not reviewing a flop every time someone flops. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to slow it down that much. We already review enough.
We do too much, to be honest. But I'm just concerned that there's going to be a lack of consistency with these calls, like we've seen with flagrant calls.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I watch these games and I'll see a guy, like a perfect example was, I think it was in game 4, I want to say. I think it was Marcus Smart, I think, threw his arm I think it was to Caleb Martin. He kind of threw his arm out, kind of like he's
Yes.
trying to hit him and missed. And they're like, oh, it's coming foul.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting
Yes.
back and I'm like, hold on, guys. So you're telling me if Marcus Smart throws a forearm or a punch or whatever and misses, it's a common foul. But if I'm going up for a layup and there's a natural motion and a guy or my arm just happens to go out like normal and a guy gets hit in the face and that's a flagrant,
Yeah.
I don't see how that makes any
I
sense.
totally agree. He literally turned around and he got mad and tried to elbow him and missed. It made no sense. Whereas exactly what you're talking about in, the heat of battle, you're going up and you just like defend yourself, accidentally make contact with someone in their face and you get it.
That's unnecessary contact. And I'm like, well, guys, it's a contact sport. It's incidental contact. Like, let's be real about this. But that's where I'm just kind of a little bit uneasy with this flopping thing because it's really hard to kind of determine like what is and what's not. And I really don't want to see there being this, like, you go back and look at it now when it comes to flagrant fouls, I have no idea what they're going to call.
No one does. You listen to the announcers, they disagree. They bring in their expert who is a former referee. He says something different. They're all wrong.
We're all just on different pages. Like no one's understanding what's going on.
Which just shows that no one knows. It's completely subjective. And that's why I think with this rule, I would just make it, if you flop when you're not made, no contact is made, it's a technical. I think that would be the easiest way to do it. But they won't. They'll make it more difficult than that.
They will. It's a huge gray area, and then it's a whole ordeal, man.
Yeah.